Welcome back to Localite, everybody. My guest today is Denise Brown, and we've been discussing the topic of domestic violence. And Denise, before we went to the break, I wanted to ask you a bit about your educational experience through this whole process and what you've learned from the shelters, and that also men are battered. I want to talk to you about that too. It's not gender specific.
No.
It crosses
all boundaries,
and
the socioeconomic boundaries that it does cross. Doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, black or white, gay or lesbian, Democrat or Republican. I've even put in there now because they don't seem to care, and what religion you are. I mean, it really doesn't matter. It can affect anybody. And domestic violence, the interesting thing is that before Nicole was murdered, which is going to be, it's 15 and a half years now, it'll be 16 years in June, people used to think that it happened to poor and homeless people. And that's not the case. I mean, there's affluent communities where I go and speak, and they just say, oh my gosh, Denise, what are we going to do? They won't leave to go to a shelter. Well, no, because they like their cushy life. They like that 10,000 square foot home, 20,000 square foot home, that, that's money, and the, driving the Bentley and the this and the that. But what they need to realize is that they could end up just like Nicole. And,
dead.
Dead, exactly. And that's the reality of it. And the ultimate form of domestic violence is murder, is death. And, there's the red flags. When I go to shelters, and I go and I speak to the women in the shelters, and I always want to go and I always want to talk to the women because their stories is really what's keeping me going now. At first it was Nicole, and Nicole is with me all the time. She's always with me. She's always pushing me, and she's always saying, you go, She's my little cheerleader.
Yeah.
But it's the victims of domestic violence. And I go in there and I talk to them, and then I see their children. Oh my God, it breaks your heart. I just want to take them all and just go, I'd love to have like a big, huge ranch with tons of land, take all the kids and all the animals and just say, okay, now you're safe. You just want to take them all. And it's the saddest thing in the world because you see like little boys there that are sitting there grabbing pillows and that are just hitting the pillows that are so angry, and you see it on their faces. And then you see little girls that are just cowering in the corner. And it's like, oh, it just breaks your heart.
Yeah.
And to get involved in this cause is something that when you do and when you learn about it, you never stop. Because it just gets in your blood, it gets in your system, it gets in your being, where you just go, you want to help these people so badly.
One of those things almost that once you know, you can't ignore, it just inspires you to keep
once you know,
reaching out.
That's why people always say, well, didn't you feel guilty for not knowing? Or didn't you feel guilty that, Nicole is not here anymore? And I go, how can you feel guilty about something you didn't know about? You can't. But once you do know, that's when I can say, yes, I feel guilty, because now I know. Because if I were to stop doing what I do now, I'd feel horribly guilty. But I'm going to the men and batterer treatments programs. I've visited those. I've talked to them. I've talked to their wives. I've talked to their children. I've talked to, them and dealing with the whole process of going through a batterer treatment program. I've talked to women in court that have had to go through batterer treatment programs, and they tell me, they go, Denise, this is the best thing I could have ever done. It educates me, it educates me as a person about domestic violence and never to wanting to go back to that. And so it's a win-win for everybody, and just the education. I think education is the key to everything, knowing about something. I went to prisons. I've gone to women's prisons. And women's prisons, it was really sad for me, and that was really hard because you see 19-year-old girls in prison for 25 to life. For defending themselves, of killing their abuser and things like that. So, and there was no battered women syndrome trying to get them out of prison at the time, because really domestic violence didn't come to the forefront. Yes, people have been working on it for ever. I learned from the people that have been doing things for 30, 40 years, I mean, they're my mentors. I learned from them. But since Nicole's murder, the Violence Against Women Act didn't even exist. They were trying to pass it when Nicole was murdered. So Joe Biden, our vice president, senator at the time, brought me to Washington, D.C. to talk about it, to go and testify. And there were senators there because I'm a huge believer in if somebody doesn't believe in domestic violence or believe that a woman is worth anything or a child is worth anything, they're going to be named. You know, I have no problem saying, well, Senator so-and-so didn't want to have this passed. I guess he doesn't believe in women and children. I guess he doesn't believe in having a safe community. I have no problem saying stuff like that. And then in turn, I will also let people know of the good things that people are doing.
Great.
Because I think those are so important.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that that is done enough. You know, where people that are just the everyday person that does so much for a community and helps out so much and, you know, does such an incredible job, I think those people are really the unsung heroes that people don't talk about. You know, news is more about the drama, about the bad, about the ugly, about the
sensationalizing everything,
yeah.
And
So,
focusing on the negative.
And so I truly believe that when we can talk about the good, I think it's really important. Talk about the good things that people are doing. You know, I was in Rikers Island, learned from the men in prisons. There was one guy that came to me, and he said to me, he goes, Denise, he goes, do you know of a program that I can go to when I get out of here? He was in on his second strike, I found out later.
Oh, okay.
And at the time, this was 15 years ago, I didn't know of a program, you know, for men. And so he was afraid that if he got out, saw his girlfriend again, that he was going to do something and he was going to end up in prison for the rest of his life. Well, domestic violence, hitting someone, is a choice. It's a choice that an individual makes. It's not cancer. It's not, you know, autism. It's not anything. It's not a disease. It's a choice. That human beings make. And that's what people need to understand. And it's not love. Domestic violence is not love. When somebody hits you, it's not love. When somebody tells you constantly, you're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid, that's not love.
Right.
That's power and control.
Right.
And that's the kind of a relationship that we want to educate all of our teens, all of our young kids. We want to educate them so that they can live in a healthy relationship, be in a healthy relationship.
Absolutely.
I mean, the biggest thing right now is teenagers. I mean, you hear horrific stuff that goes on with teenagers. I was in Ohio, Toledo, Ohio. They have young girls coming to school with tank tops on, showing off their bruises. It's like a badge of honor. You know, and so you sit there and you just go, oh my God, what is wrong with this world?
Right. Why has society even made that acceptable, that should be something that they should be proud of?
There you go.
You know?
Exactly.
Which I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what you're doing with the with kids and high school age and people who are maybe already in situations that they're at risk of potentially developing those behaviors that lead to tragic events. So again, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Denise Brown right here on Localite.